Mama, I got bad news, bad news. I've been rolling with some bad dudes, bad dudes. I've been trying to get a bag.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Ashes to Awesome podcast, Rising in Recovery. Our podcast provides light, hope, and understanding about addictions and mental health to people living within that life and the people who love them.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to another edition of Memorial Monday on the Ashes to Awesome podcast. I'm your host, Chuck LaFlange, and today in virtual studio, we have a returning guest, Doreen Donofrio. I got it right this time? Yes?
Noreen
yes, I did.
Donofrio.
Oh, Noreen Donofrio. There we go. Okay, sorry. So Noreen's come back on. She, of course, did a beautiful piece about her daughter last week, and she's a little more involved than maybe some of the people we've had on in the past. And she's got her Crystal's Heart Retreat, and she leads a pretty big group on Facebook, to say the least. So she's agreed to help me out with some of this Memorial Monday stuff, and I'm really appreciative of that because I could use the help. So thank you very much, Noreen, for coming back, and thank you very much for donating some of your time. Yeah, thank you. Our next guest is Donna Mazurek. Did I get that right? Yes? Mazurek. Okay. I still sounded closer what Noreen said earlier. Anyway, and Donna is, it's Memorial Monday, so you know why Donna's here. I don't want to tell that story. That's just not my story to tell. So why don't you start with where you think the story starts? You know it better than anybody else does. And kind of take it from there, Donna, and we'll jump in as we deem necessary, if that sounds okay to you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to just start telling us about Paige.
Okay. Paige was our youngest of 5 children. She had 3 sisters and a brother. And her brother and her had nicknames. Paige was Pork Chop and he was Meatloaf. Over the years, that's what they came up with. Paige was just a beautiful child inside and out. And then, and she didn't have a hurtful bone in her body. Just like Crystal. Your Crystal. She would get her shirt off her back if somebody needed it. But better yet, she'd come to me and have me buy them a shirt. She was just like that. Her heart was just full. She never liked conflict whatsoever. And then when she was 17, she needed a tooth extracted. And so she went to the dentist and he gave her pain medication. She said oxys. We can't come up with a script at this time, and it took us a long time to actually find out that it was oxys. But in looking through things, her dad actually had to get a tooth extraction the following week. And when I had originally called the dentist, they said, "Oh, they don't give out that stuff." The day after Paige's tooth extraction, her dad was prescribed hydrocodone from the dentist, and for his tooth extraction a week later. So go figure. I mean, it's out there, and they're still giving it out. Opioids are everywhere. So anyway, she became addicted. It only took 1 pill. And from there, our nightmare began, and it was for 5 years. It was a roller coaster. And she had stayed, she would buy drugs off the street or steal them from her brother, basically, because he had a couple hand surgeries on his finger, and he was given hydrocodone. So, there were so many, pills at our house, and she had already become addicted because only 1 pill. So it took a few years before we actually totally realized how bad she was. And one day she just told us that she was doing heroin. she had a boyfriend, and she always looked for the bad boys. And right now I have a Doberman next to me that wants attention. So, but she always, she had to have a bad boy in her life. And he showed her how to shoot up heroin. She ended up with an abscess in her arm. She almost lost her arm, and had she lost it, sometimes I wish she would have, because maybe she'd still be here. Maybe that would have been her awakening. She ended up with hepatitis C. Her liver doctor told her, "We can get it out of your system, but I won't do it unless you are clean for 6 months. Because otherwise it's not worth it. It's over $100,000. Paige and I were really, really close. We had a really good relationship through this. They had her brother ended up going on a sting to get her away from the guy and the boyfriend, because she took off with him and wouldn't tell me where she was. And she became addicted in Florida. She was down in Naples in a bad area, and the police called me because they wanted him. And then her sisters told her that I'd had a heart attack, was in the hospital. And then they turned around and called me and said, "Don't answer the phone if she calls you." So they finally got her out of that house. But there was like 5 or 6 cop cars behind, her brother. And she finally came out, and he went to jail. They took her to the police department and, basically interrogated her. And then she decided she was going to move back to Michigan and live with one of her sisters. So she kind of, lived with all of her sisters at one point or another. And she met another bad boy up here. And she was given, she started having grand mal seizures in Florida from doing the drugs. So she had a neurologist that gave her something that she shouldn't have been given. And along with that, with her seizure medicine, she ended up in a psychotic episode. So one night, I was getting pictures of her slicing her arms and her legs, and she tried to hang herself. Her boyfriend broke down the bathroom door, but he wouldn't take her to the hospital. He wouldn't call the hospital because she begged him. Don't do it. I won't do it again. Please don't do it, And so he listened to her. And had she gotten that help, maybe she'd still be here. She did probably, I would say at least 3 times in jail. Wasn't long enough. The first time she went to jail for 30 days for paraphernalia, and then she was scheduled for a you guys, please stop. She was scheduled for a to go into a rehab. She was mandated to that for 30 days. Wasn't long enough. They really thought that she was going to make it. But after about 3 or 4 months, she was done. And she ended up back on the drugs and the heroin. So 5 years later, it was the week of Easter, that Sunday, the Sunday before Easter. And so she was given medication, and that's what happened. She ended up in that psychotic episode for a weekend. I spent more of my time up in Michigan than what I did in Florida. And we had, we lived in Florida 12 years. Then the week of Easter, that Sunday night, she had a fight with her boyfriend. And I couldn't get a hold of her. I tried and tried and tried. Well, she had a girlfriend pick her up. They went and got 5 hits of heroin. Little did we know that it was straight fentanyl, or at least one of them was. Her girlfriend went to work the next morning and came home at 4 o'clock because she couldn't reach Paige, and found her in the bathroom. But that morning I went out on my daughter's porch, and I just, I knew what she had gone through, the rehabs, everything. Yeah, you could see how broken she was. And she would tell me, Mom, I have something to tell you, but I can't. She had lost a baby, and she couldn't forgive herself, too. So I went out on my daughter's porch because she had overdosed the month before, and so I was up in Michigan getting her more help, and she left rehab again. And I was doing my morning prayers, and I finally said, God, if you need to take her, take her. As long as you're on one side of me and she's on the other, I'll be okay. 10 o'clock that night, my son called and said, Mom, are you sitting down? And all I said was, is she gone? And I just got goosebumps, and he wanted to make sure I was sitting down. I said, John, don't ask me if I'm sitting. Just, is she gone? Because they didn't come to her address in Michigan. They came to our house in Florida. And yes, she was gone. So the next morning, I got a call from her judge, Judge Jody, and she ended up leaving the bench 6 months after Paige passed because she took Paige's story across the country and internationally.
When you
now.
say she was her judge, could you clarify that?
She had sentenced Paige to jail. Put her in rehab. Wasn't long enough, and she realized that later. She called me that morning. I had never met her, and she cried all night.
Wow.
Paige was the first one that was a heroin addict that she had lost, and
she really tried to help. Sounds like.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Her daughter said, Mom, why are you crying? And her daughter was only about 11 years old then. She showed Grace Paige's picture and said that she was a heroin addict and she overdosed and died. And Grace said, she doesn't look like an addict.
Wow, there you go.
Her mom says, they don't. They can be your neighbor. Nobody knows. So anyway, she ended up seeing Paige before Paige was even ready to be shown at the funeral. And the funeral director called me and said, I have this lady that wants to see, this judge that wants to see your daughter. And I'm telling her no. I said, no, let her in. She can go in. So she made promises to Paige. I don't know what they are. But she saw Paige. And when the funeral director heard her name a couple times, he says, oh my gosh, she got my daughter out of an abusive relationship. Of course I'll let her in to see her. So, it was like that. And the pastor at Paige's church that she went to, Paige actually gave herself to God again in jail with him. And he knew the judge and the funeral director. So everybody knew one another. God just works in mysterious ways, I guess. And God really held me up because I was a strong person. I had 4 kids that were basket cases along with my husband. And I could never figure out why I wasn't crying constantly. I knew Paige and I were really, really close, but still, I always cried at funerals and, everything else. And this was my daughter. So we had decided to move back to Michigan to be close to the kids. And the night before we moved, I had a prophecy at Paige's friend's church. And God told me this lady had never met me, put her hand on my head, and God told me, I took the worst pain away from you so that you could help other moms.
Wow.
And dads.
It's amazing, isn't it, Donna, how we see our children suffer so much that it is, in a way, a blessing for them to go home, because we see the trauma that they have done to themselves.
And to the whole family. I
Sure.
mean, it's just not them. She affected all of us.
Yeah. It's a family disease.
Yeah, and it's horrifying. But I turned her disease over to God probably at least a year before she died, because I couldn't do the roller coaster anymore. I just couldn't. I ended up backing in to a brand new Lincoln coming out of Sam's Club one day, and Paige, that was right after the episode where she tried to kill herself, and this little old man got out and said, "You're okay." I'm crying because I was getting an IV, so I had, my hand was all bandaged for my IVs, and I'm crying to this man, and he says, "Don't worry, it's okay. It's okay. You didn't hurt my car." And he let me go, and, all the way home, I said, "God, you have to handle this. I can't do this anymore." And I loved her. I got her into plenty of rehabs, and I told the whole family.
You think of the roller coaster.
Aunts and uncles. She had lots of aunts and uncles that didn't know.
Mm-hmm. You think of the roller coaster ride you're speaking of that we were on. Imagine what they're going through. They didn't want that any more than we wanted it for them.
Right.
Right?
She didn't want to die.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't want to die. She didn't know there was fentanyl. And I asked her right like 2 weeks beforehand, I said, "Paige, if you don't stop, you're going to die." Mm-hmm. She said, "Oh no, Mom, I got 2 dealers and they got my back." Yeah, right. The one started putting fentanyl in all of his stuff, and she was gone.
Can you share a little bit, Donna, about what you have done with your tragic loss? What you have done to make a difference?
Well, I had actually asked Judge Jody to write Paige's memorial, and I never met her until the week after the funeral. And she had sent Jeannie Richards, who is no longer with us. She had lost her son, Brian, and Stacy Burns, who is in recovery with Drug-Free All-Stars now. They came to Paige's funeral, and they were telling me, because I really didn't know what was going on out there. And back then, 8 years ago, we were only losing about 70 people a day. Now it's over 300. And I was just floored. And so we decided at that point in time the Lord decided that we were going to do a 501c3 and we were going to fight. So that's what we did.
What does Paige's Promise do? What do you do in your nonprofit?
It's awareness, education, and recovery. We will help anybody. I tell Paige's story to cashiers in the grocery store, anybody I meet. And they can be a complete and total stranger, but God knows they need to hear something. And it's amazing because when she died, there was not Narcan, and addiction wasn't a disease. So the stigma when she first died was horrific, and it's pretty bad still, but when she literally, when she first died, I couldn't believe it. And you hear all the time, "Oh, not my child." And then later on, it may be their child. They just don't know. But they've come a long way with that stuff, and mats too. Like we have fentanyl testing strips and the Narcan.
You give this stuff out, right? You go around and pass it out.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And where do you pass it out?
We're gonna take a quick break for a PSA.
And now for a quick PSA brought to you by Together We Can. Grief isn't limited to the loss of a loved one. For all the support you need, TWC offers a grief and loss support and education group offered free of charge. Learn more at twcrecoverylife.org. Now for a quick public service announcement. One of the best ways to reduce stigma is with education. If you still have questions that we haven't answered on today's show, you can learn more about Together We Can's education group at twcrecoverylife.org.
Hi everybody, this is Carl with today's public service announcement about naloxone, or, as it's more commonly known, Narcan, a medication that can help save the life of somebody experiencing an opioid overdose. Did you know that in 2021 opioids were responsible for over 7,000 deaths in Canada and 106,000 deaths in the United States? These numbers are staggering, but there is hope. Narcan is a medication that can reverse the effects of an opioid overdose and help save a life. Narcan is available for free at participating pharmacies and harm reduction centers across Canada and is also available without a prescription at most pharmacies in the United States. Now I know most of you won't be around people using opioids, but you never know when it will be around you, and you could save the life of someone who is loved and who loves.
And so, along with at the funeral, Jeannie actually read Paige's memorial that Judge Jody I had write, and Judge Jody left the bench 6 months later to take Paige's story across the country, and
wow.
She even goes internationally. So she does have her own law firm too. So that's when we decided that Paige's Promise was going to be born. But since then, I mean, God's put me on an amazing journey. I've gone to Purdue Pharmaceuticals and marched with 500 other moms and dads who had lost children. I went to Harvard to march to take the Sackler name off the buildings.
Beautiful.
I've gone to Dayton, Ohio a couple of times, spent a week in the Epic Center because they were the worst in the country. And then they got better, and then they got kind of bad again with COVID. Dayton closed up all their bathrooms because there were so many people dying in them. You couldn't, so if you're there, you can't find a public restroom to go in when we were there. Saw somebody overdose on meth, so we called EMS, got him Narcan. There was also a drug bust on the street because we were staying in an Airbnb on the street, and down farther on that street is where they had all the body bags in the beginning, and they had the refrigerated trucks because they didn't have enough room in their morgues. So they were really bad, but we got with different things and found out what they were doing to make it better. I heard that Portugal was doing amazing stuff, and now I'm hearing maybe it's not what they thought, because they had taken their overdoses down to about 20 a year.
And everything, if you see a statistic, there's money behind it, right? So at some point, you always have to question all of the statistics. And what I understand what's happened in Portugal was a wonderful thing. I haven't heard the opposite yet, and maybe it has. I don't know.
It's just been recent.
There is no easy answer to any of this, and and I think it's special interest groups. You always have to wonder where the information's coming from, right? So as soon as you see a statistic, somebody paid for the statistic, somebody wanted something to come of it. right? And then that's where you have to always question that stuff, right? So it's just not face value. But
I've been filmed for a documentary called Needles in the Hay. It's about the heroin epidemic in the Midwest. It's not a movie yet, but hopefully he will be able to do that. It's by Brett Myers, and it's awesome. It has people shooting up, people, Paige's stories in there. Judge Jody speaks on it. And then when I went to Purdue Pharmaceuticals with 500 other moms and dads, all I said was, I want to confront them face to face. And so I was one of 28 people out of about 180,000 that was picked to talk to them face to face in the bankruptcy court. It was
and over, every one of us would like to do that.
Yep, and it was over the laptop on Zoom. But anyways, the next morning, what I had said was the headline for the New York Times: "You murdered my daughter." And they also took her story from Facebook and that and put it together, and it went internationally all over the world. So God made that happen because it was on my heart to be able to do that. I'm in the bankruptcy lawsuit, but it's evidence-based, and you can't come up with scripts from 2010. They're destroyed, so we're kind of like lost there. Paige, the week she died, there were 15 other people that died from surrounding neighborhoods in Oakland County. And I bet all of their death certificates say undeterminable. Well, undeterminable is unacceptable to me, but can't get it changed. And when I kept going to the coroner, she finally said, we were told by higher-ups to put undeterminable on their death certificates. So you lose out on insurance claims, and they don't want their property values to go down.
Wow.
Sad. I've also gone back to Dayton and spoke at the Dayton Fellowship for their 25th anniversary, and I gave them a tree and a plaque from Rooting for Recovery. I was one of the founders for that, founders for the global recovery movement. I both have left those two, but I still do plaques. And afterwards, I had people come up to me after I spoke and said, oh, I needed to hear that. Will you hug me? And I'm a hugger anyways, but they would say, oh, I just got goosebumps. I had a gal who was in recovery, but she was pushed from a 10th story floor window, broke 108 bones in her body. And we talk off and on still. So the dogs are coming back.
What would you like to see happen?
I would like this epidemic to end.
Right.
One death is one too many.
Mm-hmm.
And Paige's promise, we have a $500 scholarship every year that we give out for somebody going, into college. A lot of times they've been through recovery. They're going to college to fight substance use disorder. I give out 10 bags a month filled with blankets and flip-flops and water bottles and rain ponchos. We probably, information on where to get help like from Hope Not Handcuffs. I put Crystal's Heart Healing House in there. Information. We do Bibles and journals and pens. Whatever we think might help somebody that's homeless or just getting into recovery or just leaving a recovery home. And then we got asked by the health department to do 300 bags for the jail. Because when people get out of jail, and this is just one county in Michigan, which is Newaygo County, but when they get out of jail, they're homeless. They've got nothing. So we're in the process of doing that. And they came up with a few grants to help us along our way. Because everything costs money. And
that's a beautiful thing.
We do a lot of fundraising, but it's tough. It's really tough. Yeah, I want to see this end. And then we do support for grieving parents. I've talked to Mom and have numerous friendships now. Support for people that are trying to keep their kids alive because the substance user isn't calling us for help. It's normally the parent or the brother or an aunt or uncle. But I'll help anybody that gives us a phone call. Right. I've done craft shows and have stood out and told Paige's story for weekends on end. We've given numerous things away just to get people going. We work.
I think, Donna, everything you said sounds to me like connection, right? And that's connection is so important, right? And you're giving a blanket or a set or a pair of socks or flip flops or whatever, a Bible, a journal. You're making connections with people that really need connections, and that's what's so beautiful about what you're doing, right? Yes. And that's just my perceived lack of connection for me was the boot on my neck for the last 2 years I was in active addiction, right? So what you're doing is amazing. Please keep doing that. Yeah.
So well, it's all about the love, to jump in with that. Chris?
Yeah.
Yes,
it is. It really is.
I think that's what needs to be spread because I've spoken at places and a girl got up and said, when I was in active addiction, it was like nobody loved me.
Hey guys, I don't know if you've heard about my new podcast. It's called The Morning Cup of Kindness. It's 5 minutes. It's just a random story about kindness, and it's a great way to start your day. The great part about it is you can advertise for a nonprofit or a fundraiser, any charity that you want, for absolutely free. All you got to do is come on, tell a 5-minute story about kindness for everybody else to start their day with, and boom, you've advertised for a great cause. If you're interested in doing that, you can reach out to us through any of the socials. You see the logo there, you can do that. And to get it done, you can submit it, or you can record with me in virtual studio. All the details are on our website at a2apodcast.com. Check it out. Thanks, guys. Now back to the show.
And a lot of times it keeps them in the disease.
And I was there and I said, well, you know what? I love you.
So
God loves you.
And
the more people you can tell every day, God loves you. I used to, every time I went to church, I had this little old man, and he would look at me, and he would say, God loves you. And we just had a connection. And then his family took him back to New York, and I don't know where he is.
Oh, no. But when you're speaking of not feeling loved, we just spoke about this on a recording I did earlier today. There's one thing worse than not feeling loved, and it's not feeling lovable. And it's 1,000 times worse, and it's horrible, and it's what keeps so much of us doing what we're doing. It's an awful thing to experience, right? It's an awful thing.
Yes, so. They feel abandoned.
100%. 100%. That's my story.
And that's why we have to fight this stigma, because these are human beings, and there shouldn't be the shame. The shame keeps them down.
Absolutely, it does. 100%. Right.
when Paige overdosed a month before she died, the doctor in the hospital told her sister, we're just going to get her better, send her on her way, because the next time she comes, she'll be dead. They wouldn't put her into rehab. My daughter went to the administrator, and she was put into detox, Paige was, and the administrator did compassion classes for these doctors. And you're talking, 8 years ago. Well, 8 years ago. It was like they're calloused.
We've come a long way, and it's because moms like us and many others that have taken this tragedy and done a beautiful thing. We've turned one terrible thing into something that's helping hundreds, thousands.
But it's not ending. And, sometimes, I've thought about this. There is a big kick with fentanyl right now. Fentanyl's killed everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Now, fentanyl's an opioid, and opioids kill. Doesn't matter if it's heroin, fentanyl. Now there's a new drug out, Xyla something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And fentanyl or Narcan
doesn't work for it, right?
Yeah. On any of the benzos, it doesn't work. Yeah.
What do we do? And and I've thought about everything, and I know there's a lot of groups that have memorials. They're trying to do Times Square. They're trying to have their own fentanyl awareness day, August 21st. Well, opioid awareness day
31st.
or overdose awareness day is August 31st. Why are we adding?
I agree.
And
it's dividing us.
I think the thing of it is we have to go back, because most people don't start addiction shooting up heroin. Saying, I'm going to become an addict today and shoot up heroin. No.
Nobody does.
We have to go back to the root cause. And until we get rid of the root cause, we're not going to get rid of this epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the way I feel.
Right.
And, Paige was an opiate. Doctors are still giving out opioids. They may not be giving out as many, but really, when you think about it, it only takes one for certain people.
Yeah. I was watching the movie last night, Painkillers. It's kind of like the story
Second time that's come up today, too. Yeah.
Dope Sick.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
And every time I watch these kind of series, it just gets the blood boiling, because it's all about the money. I mean, these are lives. It's all about the money to these people.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and they're billionaires, and so what do they care? Although I did hear that they're looking at doing criminal charges against the Sacklers. There's people that want them in jail.
Mm-hmm.
And they really haven't lost anything.
Right.
They really haven't.
And there's no comparison to the loss of life.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I told them, I said, I held up her morgue picture to them and said, are you able to kiss your child at night? Tonight? Are you able to hug them? Well, this is what you gave me.
Mm-hmm.
And Paige always had her tongue sticking out. She was the joker of the family. She just liked to joke around. She kept us all going. She thought she had the best birthday ever because she was born on 7/11. And so she'd go to every 7-Eleven around, take every flavor they had until she was sick. And she did that yearly.
There you go. We were getting there. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I think.
But
Go ahead. No, sorry. No, cut you off.
It's like we got a chance to go to Crystal's Heart Healing House and do the retreat, and it was awesome. It was the best thing.
I'd like you to tell us about that
friends.
through your lens. Of course, I've heard about it from Noreen, but your lens as somebody who was introduced to it as somebody who needed to be there. Right? How was that for you? What was that like?
It was great.
Yeah.
It was like Paige was there.
Mm-hmm.
She was with us, and it's beautiful, and it was serene, and you didn't have to do anything you didn't want to, but we were there and we wanted to. It was just so relaxing, and we had group and we had talks, and Paige, actually, I think it helped my husband a lot, although I'm the one that couldn't shut up. My mouth was going constantly. But my husband went through depression from all of this, and he used to call Paige his angel. And he lost his angel. Well, not too long ago, I happened to find something that he wrote when she died about her, being its angel and being gone. He was heartbroken. We all are heartbroken because we don't have her on her birthday. We're going to 7-Eleven. We do birthday cakes. I know she's still with us, but you can't hold her. She sends, signs. I mean, we would get signs. Look at all the hummingbirds flying back and forth in Georgia. They kept flying over our heads, and some of them were saying, "Oh, it's just a big bug." No, it was a hummingbird.
I love the fact that your husband came too, because I truly believe that so many of the fathers get lost. It's like
they do.
They're in a lot of pain too, and they don't express it. It was really good to have your husband here and sharing the male's point of view too.
Well, this past year I had a father reach out to me, and a few years back he had contacted Paige's Promise, and we must have talked, and then he called me this past New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, and he said, "Can you send me Paige's logo?" So I sent him, her logo and stuff. Well, he runs a snowmobile races for young kids so that they don't end up addicted. He keeps them busy in the winter. And they're antique snowmobile races, I guess. So he did a snowmobile hood in Paige's logo. And it was supposed to be signed by all the people that were racing. And then he's going to give it to me. But we didn't have cold enough weather here in Michigan last year for it. So he still has it. And hopefully we can do it this next February, I think it is. But that's just from somebody that, reached out and he says, "You helped me," and he lost his son. He ended up addicted in college and lost his son, who was into sports and golf and everything else, and he's broken. And he just needs someone to talk to, and I'll talk to anybody and I'll hug everybody.
There's a lot of pain out there. It's awesome that you do what you do, and the awareness and the fighting and the Sacklers and everything you do. Thank you for that, Donna.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. But the other thing I learned at Crystal Heart Healing House Retreat was a heart hug.
Oh, it was a heart hug.
You want to
Noreen
describe
can-
the heart? Okay.
Yeah, you hug heart to heart.
It's usually the opposite way of what you tend to want to go. We hug our heart to heart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we let off balloons and we painted rocks.
Biodegradable balloons.
Yes,
Of course they
and
were.
we,
Of course they were. Yeah. Anything else would be irresponsible. Yes.
we made angel bookmarks, and we had a lot of fun doing that. Paige's Promise does angel bookmarks, and we do rear view mirror hangers and things like that. Just trying to make a little extra money. I do shirts now, and my one shirt says, "I fight overdose awareness for my daughter Paige, forever 22." And then my other one, the back of it says, "I am a recovery supporter of substance use disorder."
Ooh, there you go. It's almost a wrap. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I
It's
like
awesome.
that, though. I do. Yeah. I think that brings us to my favorite part of the show. That's the Daily Gratitudes.
Today's Daily Gratitudes are brought to you by Revolution Recovery, helping men recover and become their best selves through support and treatment. They've been there and they understand.
The daily gratitude.
Yes. And I appreciate, ladies, that I think you guys are well into your healing now, so it's not so hard. Sometimes when the sadder topics, it's when we need them the most, right? The gratitudes. And, I'll say it kind of behind the curtain for the listeners. I was in a pretty wildly cranky mood an hour ago. It's been a long day. And, we're having some tech problems. And I'm sitting here listening to both of you, and I'm putting everything in their perspective. And thank you for that. So I'm going to throw out a gratitude right off the get-go and say thank you.
Well, thank you for that. How about you, Donna? What's your daily gratitude?
Well, my first one is God. I'm grateful for Him. My second one is family. And my third one today is that I'm honored that I was asked to do this interview. I'm very grateful.
Well, thank you for doing that and spreading the awareness and all the help that you do for others.
Absolutely.
Yep. And if you ever need me again, just let me know.
And for the final gratitudes, it goes out to you, everybody listening right now. You guys, whatever you're doing, please keep doing it. The numbers keep going up. We keep getting the message to more and more people. If you're on Spotify, comment. If you're on Apple, do the like and the review, or the rating and review. You know what? If you see the logo anywhere, please just like, comment, share. You know what to do. You know all the things. Every time you do any one of those things, you're getting me a little bit closer to living my best life, and that's to make a humble living, spreading the message. The message is this: if you are in active addiction right now, today could be the day. Today could be the day that you start that lifelong journey. Reach out to a friend, reach out to a family member, go to a meeting, call it detox, do whatever it is you need to do to get that journey started, because it is so much better than the alternative. And if you are the loved one of somebody who's suffering an addiction right now, just taking the time to listen to us, if you could just take one more minute out of your day, text that person, let them know they're loved. Use the words,
"You are loved."
that little glimmer of hope just might be the thing that brings them back.